Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Philoso-hour, the show where we dedicate a few minutes of our time to significant ponderings of the philosophical variety and then think about how they relate to a current event. Today we will be discussing a seemingly futuristic and, quite frankly, unsettling operation that might be coming sooner than you think to a hospital near you. But before we dive in, let's introduce the topic of the day. Transhumanism. Have you ever felt limited by your physical body, wanted to remember more for longer periods of time, live longer, wished you were smarter, or perhaps wanted to be happier? These are some of the questions Swedish philosopher Nick Bostrom asks you to consider in his essay, Utopia. If any of this sounds appealing to you, you might just be a student of transhumanism, the idea that we as humans have a moral obligation to use technology to overcome our biologically imposed limits. As a transhumanist, you have an innate desire not to be human. And if not, you're probably a bioconservatist. You believe that there are moral limits to what we ought to do to ourselves with technology, even if we have access to it. You'd like to advance within reason. But before you decide, consider the clothes on your back, the car you drive to work, the painkillers you take, and realize we have already begun down the path of advancement to the human body. And then after that, consider where you draw the line. For example, in 2018, shocking news sent both journalists and philosophers a buzz. 2 surgeons announced their plan to transplant a human head from a living person onto a donor cadaver. Their head candidate would be somebody with a dying body and a healthy mind, while their body candidate would be a victim of fatal head trauma, body left unscathed. Seems a bit Frankenstein, no? Their plan has yet to take place, but if the thought of this transplant makes you shiver, consider what makes them so different from other transplants. Both internal and external organ transplants have had success for many years. Even an avid transhumanist would be in favor of this operation because it works to avoid the limitations of the human body. If our physical self is what limits us, why not obtain a newer, healthier body whenever we're about to expire and continue to live? This is simply another step in advancement that brings us closer to a non-human existence. On the other hand, this likely crosses the moral boundary for many bioconservatives. But why? Aren't we still living a human life if we continue to live through another human body? Well, they might argue that the human body has an expiration date for a reason. Further, other than the fact that this procedure has been deemed basically medically impossible by most biologists, it unearths a problem of personal identity that troubles philosophers. If the transplant is successful, will the owner of the head or the owner of the body wake up in the hospital bed? Most think the owner of the head will wake up because the brain is what seems to conduct our actions, movements, and memories. But what if the person who wakes up has no memories? Let's consider a thought experiment known as Theseuss's ship to help us decide. When traveling across the sea, Theseus slowly replaces every physical part of his ship so that when he arrives home, the ship he's in is made of completely new materials. Philosophers ask, is this still Theseus's ship? If you answered yes, you're on track with many philosophers, but why is it that it's the same ship? Those prescribing to theories of physical continuity believe that the continuous physical overlap of the materials on the boat are what makes the ship the same, much like the ever-changing human body. Every 7 years, we are made of different cells, so are we really the same person? Others prescribe to the thought continuity theory, which believe that the overlapping sequence of the experiences of the ship, the idea that the ship was there for all of Theseus's journey, make it the same ship, much like the human memory. So in the case of the head transplant, if the person who wakes up remembers everything that the head donor remembers, we can probably consider it to be the head donor who wakes up. One could also argue that the head shares an element of physical continuity as the head of the head donor still remains. But if the person who wakes up doesn't have any memories, who would it be? Would it be the body donor due to the overlap of physical states? Or someone entirely new due to the absence of overlapping thoughts? It's questions like these that may help us answer questions about our personal identities and those of transhumanist nature about whether it's possible to ascend our physical bodies. If we still continue to exist beyond memory and physicality, what's stopping us from eternity? This has been Philoso-hour. Hope you enjoyed and see you next time.